Hey everyone, welcome back to Exposing Project Rose. In this video, we're going to dive even deeper into the messaging of Britney Spears' Instagram, particularly focusing on the history of the church and the Vatican. In my previous video, we've covered Britney's exposure on the MK Ultra style programming involved in Hollywood and beyond. We've learned how ritual abuse is happening and how it all stems back to the big eye. She's also shown us and hinted at how there have been multiple Britneys throughout the years and how she was essentially bred to be a slave for the industry. And now what we're learning is of her family and not the family that you think. Remember one of her biggest hits? I'm sure you can recall it. I'm a slave for you. That says it all. But this chess game goes way back, further than you can even think, and I'm going to share with you the origin of it all. There are many exposures happening through Britney's Instagram, some of which haven't even been deciphered yet. There's still some out there that are lingering, but one that stands out is her repeated mentions of the Vatican, churches, God, and this was one I couldn't figure out. Sure, you can associate the church and the Vatican with child abuse, but that seemed too obvious. We're well aware that that's been happening. And fun fact, since 1950, there has been a $2.6 billion settlement on abuse allegations. We know by now her messaging is very cryptic and very deep, and it goes beyond the surface. So once I uncovered what I believe her messaging is regarding the truth, I was stopped dead in my tracks. Everything I've uncovered links directly back to Britney's cryptic posts. But what was more alarming was the fact that this directly impacts me as well as all of you. In my opinion, what she is exposing here is truly going to make the world flip upside down. But it makes so much sense. Everything that she has previously exposed, while crazy, sad, and disturbing, we always somewhat believed it was happening or could happen. It's easy to accept and believe that there's programming, sexual abuse, ritual abuse, trafficking, and various types of cloning happening in the world. But what is to follow requires your willingness to accept that everything you knew about the church is not entirely true. It also requires a bit of reading at the end of when I'm done talking, but and close attention to see how everything links together and to Britney. I understand fully that what I'm about to talk about may seem blasphemous to highly religious and passionate followers of the Roman Catholic Church. But don't worry, you're not alone, as there are 1.2 billion Roman Catholics around the world. Most people today really want to know the truth, since we are lied to about pretty much everything every day. But many aren't willing to accept a truth that doesn't align with a core belief that has been fostered their entire life. And it's a very hard pill to swallow. This revelation is coming, and it's coming fast. So jump on the train so you're not as shocked when it is disclosed. And I'd also like to make it uber clear that I am not a religious person. I consider myself spiritual, and I'm not political, as that's just a way to divide our country and the people. They're both playing for the same team anyway, and I stand for unity, equality, honesty, and love among all. So with that said, let's get into it. In my last video, I spoke of a book called The Immortality Key, The Secret History of the Religion with No Name by the New York Times bestselling author Brian Muraresku. He has spent over 15 years studying the history of Christianity. He has been featured on Joe Rogan Experience, as well as many other, podcasts. He uncovers and explains the ancient and highly secretive, pretty much invisible religion, and its mystery rituals using psychedelics, and how the practices of this mystery religion have truly never died. They've just been kept expertly hidden and locked away by the Vatican and the real ruling families. And no, it's not the Rothschilds as the most prized secret possession. But now Brian and Britney are handing over the key for us to unlock it all. So everything that I will share moving forward comes directly from Brian's book and a little extra, digging that I've done on my own. I really feel that it is so important that you read this book, The Immortality Key. In fact, I would recommend listening to the audiobook. He does a fabulous job, and it's much easier to absorb the information with him reading it aloud. If I could, I would buy each and every one of you a copy of this book. It's that important, I feel, for everyone to read. I put a lot of time and effort into researching and summarizing the highlights for you. But mind you, I'm not a historian, theologian, and obviously I'm not a skilled content creator either. So this might not be perfect, but the overall message won't be hard to understand. Given this community of Exposing Project Rose focuses on Britney's messages, I've included everything that links back to her, but there's so much more, as this whole story is so much bigger than Britney anyway. It's really worth your time to read. It's a long, comprehensive, well-researched book. But if you want to skip through it to the juicy stuff, part 2, chapter 8 to the end is the most important. You could finish listening to it in, a couple days. It's not that long. And it's so fascinating, compelling, and revealing. You truly won't want to stop. It's mind-blowing. So here's the history for you. And no, don't zone out because I said history, because it is wild. Essentially, the story begins all the way back to ancient Greece and their Gnostic teachings. The Greek Dark Ages of the 12th to 9th centuries BC. So this is before Jesus Christ, before the apostles and the writings of the Bible. This includes, Alexander the Great, the time of him. But fun fact, I don't know if you know, I didn't know, at the time of Alexander the Great, they really didn't even have a term for homosexuality. There was no stigma attached to the homoerotic attachments in ancient Greece. Men loved men loved women loved men. It was just, there was really no stigma attached to it. And there's also even evidence of, pimping out men and women and passing around their personal slaves, which that will come back full circle later on. But then the Roman Empire eventually took over in 27 BC, and this is when the sacred Greek history morphed into the story that the Romans wanted to tell. This part is taken from Wikipedia on ancient Greece, and it says, classical Greek culture, especially philosophy, had a powerful influence on ancient Rome. For this reason, classical Greece is generally considered the cradle of Western civilization. So you can consider this time like Greco-Roman or Paleo-Christianity, when the Greek philosophies were adopted by and kept as a highly regarded secret by the Romans. So what was, the big secret? Well, there's two: women and drugs. The women were in charge and highly valued and respected. Goddesses, if you will. In true history, which stems back to ancient Greece, long before Jesus, women were the true providers of how to connect to the gods, and the spirit world. These women would mix up various mystical potions and present the true Eucharist, and that term comes later on with Jesus, but they would present like a Eucharist, a thanksgiving, an offering to those who wanted to experience God. They've made this homemade Eucharist since the beginning. The Eucharist of today, giving thanks to God, Thanksgiving, is not the same Eucharist as the mystical original. The ancient Greek women who had pharmacology expertise passed down this wisdom since the early Gnostics. The true Eucharist has had a psychedelic component, right then and there. Like, this is why Britney uses the mushroom, emoji. And it is known that the two biggest thorns in the side of the church are women and drugs. This truth makes the church and the modern day placebo Eucharist obsolete. So if you didn't know, the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, we know Britney has talked about Mary Magdalene. This gospel is known as the Gospel of Infinity. And it was also completely banned from the New Testament. This gospel, Mary Magdalene's gospel, explains how Jesus entrusted her with the true word of the Lord. Now, the male apostles had a very hard time after his death accepting that Christ would only tell her, a woman, and not them. But in the end, they ultimately accepted this truth and went forth, with the various teachings of Jesus. All Gnostic memories, teachings, and the importance of women were wiped from the Bible, scrubbed from the origins of the faith by the church. All of the inquisitions and witch hunts and murders that were taking place, it was all to scare the women who dared to try and create the true Eucharist, connecting directly to God. As you know, they were burned alive. So many were killed over this secret. They were persecuting those who had attempted to share any of this Gnostic ancient Greek knowledge. It was only ever mothers and daughters who were persecuted, not fathers and sons. These witches, as they were, essentially originally known, they were supposedly had the pipeline to the gods. In essence, the women were the original chosen ones. And you recall Britney's post, of her standing on the pipeline. She could be talking about this or, the conspiracy regarding actual pipelines. But that one I feel like would be almost too obvious, but time will tell. The mothers and daughters were targeted because they needed to get rid of the powerful women who knew too much. This was the apple. This wisdom was the apple, the forbidden fruit, the Gnostic teachings given by the snake, which is known to be the true God. Eve eats it and then is exiled. Just like the women and daughters who ate the apple from the tree of knowledge, and they were persecuted for doing so. They were exiled. Only men could connect to the spiritual heaven as they felt they were superior. As the Romans destroyed the ancient history of the Greeks and Gnostics and women, they believed women were subordinate to men and completely alienated them from God. They were told that women can't be trusted with the true Eucharist, as they knew women were the chosen ones and represented the most dangerous enemy of the human race and the Christian church. Only male priests and the Roman elite could have the secrets called by God to handle the true Eucharist. It was the original form of elitism. The modern day Roman Catholic Church is a global conspiracy which is ran by the true bloodline families, as well as the CIA, the Mossad, and the Freemasons, trickling all the way down to Hollywood and the entertainment industry. So the Vatican suppressed the original Eucharist to rob faithful Christians of the true vision. The Church and the Vatican would do anything to suppress any competition. They also are very aware that plants and herbs are the cure-alls, but that's been suppressed as well. The botanicals and flowers that they used took on mystical qualities for them. So let's review what exactly this true Eucharist was, because Jesus didn't create the original Eucharist. We know the famous wine. The wine that was used is not the wine, the alcoholic wine that we know today. It is just a representation. So Dionysus is the god of wine and ecstasy. The vine of Dionysus was known as the true vine of Christ. This magical IV drink can derange the mind and alter consciousness. It is known as the graveyard wine or lizard wine or the toad Eucharist. One recipe, they would have vials of this strange potion from a large toad and acid burnt from hair, which ultimately ended up to a substance similar to DMT and LSD. They've used honey, milk, bodily fluids, psychedelic drugs like ergot. They are used in the ritual to sum up the dead and connect with the gods. Now, Valentinus was the most famous of the Gnostics, and he wanted to steer the Romans to the true version of Christianity. That is why Britney posts about Valentine's Day and the cherubs. It is also said that, quote, the lizard never went out of style, meaning the true Eucharist never went out of style and is still used today. They call this wine an enhanced IV drink stemming from Dionysus, the god of wine and ecstasy. In his book, Brian covers how ancient artifacts like chalices were chemically analyzed to determine what exactly they held, coming back with an astounding find that psychedelics were in fact used with other bodily fluids, including blood. This is known as the psychedelic blood cocktail. Now, incense is always used. It's used in, the modern day church, but that's just a representation of what the spiked incense that was used since the beginning. Britney talks about Mary Magdalene and how she liked some incense as well. She's talking about this spiked incense, and the origins of perfume stems from here as well. Now, there's an ointment, which is called the lizard ointment. This is what Britney is referring to when she talks about lotion or when her skin is so dry. Lizard magic is what is referenced when they are talking about these, lotions and incense. They would drown a lizard in oil, which then would create a lotion. And by using this lotion, oil or incense, you'd get the vision, and one's own blindness can open to the rising sun. They would lather their bodies in green ointment. This would cause out-of-body travel and psychedelic journeys when the incense was inhaled, almost like aromatherapy today, but not as cool. Now, tea, she's always talking about tea, is known as kala, and it's the warm stuff. It's like a spiked hot punch that we know, but with psychedelics. Using any of these libations or potions would invoke out-of-body travel where space and time mean nothing. By eating the flesh and blood, immortality they would achieve. Meaning, drinking the original Eucharistic wine, it would show the true nature of the universe. And finding out that immortality is certainly obtainable. Now, Circe is the most famous witch in antiquity. Women and men would travel to her for her magical recipes. She spun her own cloth and made her own clothes on her loom. She lured all witches and goddesses and men to her for the potion. It says that she's able to turn men into pigs and then back again, meaning she would give these men the potions that would take them to another place and being something else, and then back again after the potion wore off. The real Eucharist, which is the drug of immortality, are various pharmacons that they used to connect with the gods. And there's many different recipes, different ways of doing this. Like I said, incense, lotion, wine. And that's why Britney is saying she's a chef in the making. She is, learning how to connect. These mystical and psychedelic drugs shortcut and fast track the unlocking the kingdom of heaven. The Enlightenment period where you learn that this is, in fact, all a dream. Remember, Britney's tour, dream within a dream. I mean, it all comes full circle. So at the end of the Greek Empire, moving into the Roman Empire, cults emerged known as the Dionysus Greco-Roman mystery cults. They essentially practiced this underground religion with no name. It had to go underground, literally and figuratively, as anyone attempting to practice this religion would be persecuted. Meanwhile, the Romans in the church who were persecuting people were secretly doing it underground too. For the Greeks, anyone could be initiated. And they would travel to these sacred sites and have the initiation done in the hypogeum, which means underground. And it would involve the refrigerium, or meal for the dead. Hence the gym, when Britney talks about the gym, the hypogeum, gym, and the refrigerium or the refrigeria, the refrigerator, the red refrigerator that she posts. When the Romans took over, they kept this initiation strictly for the elites and their privileged children, where they are given this secret knowledge. And as mentioned before, this is where you learn the true nature of God and existence that the Vatican never wants you to hear about. So, during these mystery initiations, they hold rituals where they would consume the drugs and then consult the cosmos for everything they want to know. At that point, they feel like they are divine. These initiates are the only ones who would receive the religious and universal secrets. During these initiations, wands were used. Britney posting the little fairy with the wands, and they are placed at a certain angle. The angle of the gesture is the initiation of the drugs that would be stashed at the top of the wine, like incense, like those little kid wands that shoot out the little bubbles. They would also use the mystical mind-altering incense and libations for the secret initiation parties, as I mentioned before, the refrigerium, which i.e. is the Last Supper. During these initiation parties, which, the apostles, that could have been an initiation party. They would take place on sacred grounds, or graveyards. And the initiates, after consuming the drugs, are thrown into marvel, ecstasy, and frenzy, complete with social orgies. Essentially, they all took the love potions, which allowed them to put on their love glasses. The biggest secret in the cult mysteries is, quote, knowing the art of dying before dying. By doing this, you get a taste of the afterlife. You learn how to die before you die, and you can experience God this way. You understand that you yourself is divine. You recall Britney posting a book about a near-death experience. She's talking about this ritual dying before you die, hence near-death experience. During these rituals, they take these drugs that reveal the cosmos for what truly is eternal and timeless. The blind will learn to see. The mortal becomes immortal. The initiate will transcend past, present, and future for life and for death. Every moment is an eternity of its own. Why wait for death to experience this truth? They practice dying, which means it's not actually dying, it's becoming God and understanding that's what you really are. So this is what I believe the global elite bloodlines of today are still doing. And remember, Britney is in this bloodline. They have initiations with sacred rites and practice these ancient rituals just in a modern sense. These rituals include essentially everything from drugs, drunken orgies, and God only knows what else. The abuse of children, women, men obviously seems to go in hand with how these rituals turned into like an evil evolution of the original rituals. And how, I don't want to know how women and children are involved. I probably don't want to know, especially because blood seems to be involved in these rituals. Now we know the ultimate true source of the Eucharist. and how women played the most important role in connecting with the gods, the afterlife, and the true secrets of the universe, and how to gain immortality. With all that said, it's time to move on to the Roman Catholic Church, since the Romans were the ones who got rid of the true history while keeping the truth for themselves. The Roman catacombs are shadow tunnel cities, yes, actual cities that run for hundreds of miles deep under the streets of Rome, including St. Peter's Basilica and the Vatican. They house thousands of tombs. Only the Vatican can grant access to these catacombs, and only 7 are open to the public. Inside these catacombs hold ancient secrets and artifacts stemming back to ancient Greece. These secrets include information on how to connect and transition to the afterlife, right under the streets of Rome. Both of which, St. Peter's Basilica and the Vatican, Britney references numerous times. The Pope's personal library holds these ancient teachings. Down in the catacombs, they are filled with graffiti. In the old sense, frescoes, and also in the modern sense, actual graffiti like we know today. The catacombs are what Britney is talking about when she speaks of graffiti, and she has to play. Play will come up later on. The hidden catacombs hide the truth. Christianity's biggest secrets belong to everyone. The true food and drink of the Lord of Death. It was ultimately the Roman Catholic Church who started the war on drugs and the war on women. America did not start the campaign Say No to Drugs on their own, although the hippies were probably getting a little too close to the sun and loving a little too much. They needed to put a stop to that. They've been trafficking and evolving the true nature of the psychedelic Eucharist since the Gnostics. The mystery religion that never died, the secret society. In summary, this revelation stems all the way back to the Greek gods and the Greco-Roman Paleo-Christianity to the Roman Catholic Church, who ultimately wiped away women and the true history away from the masses while keeping the truth for themselves for centuries. This secret has been endlessly passed down to the present-day elite and the bloodlines. Like most things, which start out with pure intentions of just connecting to God, if those secrets get into the wrong hands, it will, and it has evolved into evil. You know Hollywood and the entertainment industry see themselves as God and would be all over it. Sell their soul to be initiated into this club. Power, money, fame. Exactly what they and the current global elites are accused in taking part in. It is said in Brian's book, some people like to read about God and some like to experience God. Read or play, as Britney says. Read about God or experience. Play God. Right now, World War III is happening, which is a war on this religion with no name and those who practice it. It is truly an act of spiritual war. She's always talking about the Vatican. And should this be true, it surely would be the most shocking disclosure to mankind ever, no? Don't kill the messenger. I'm not saying this is true. but I'm saying I'm pretty sure this is what Britney's talking about. Like I said, this covert effort of ultimately exposing the enormity of this disclosure is so much bigger than Britney. 1.2 billion people are literally getting a spiritual bomb dropped on them. The care plan for Britney, the conservatorship, that's null and void at this point. Britney and the Britneys are safe and truly doing the Lord's work. Another fun fact, while it's not in Rome, the Notre Dame Church has the bumblebee, which I'll explain later, the bumblebee bell, as well as the 9-inch true cross in which Jesus was nailed to. Now, what does that make you think of? As in 9-inch nails. Britney's post about 9-inch nails. That's why she uses the nails icon. The true cross that Jesus was nailed to, the 9-inch nails. I wouldn't be surprised if the mystery surrounding Kate Middleton has something to do with this disclosure, because the future of the church, as well as the monarchy, is on the line. The Queen has died. Apparently Charles is soon to be deceased. Rothschild has died. Epstein, quote unquote, died. Diddy is going down. The first domino to fall. Is Clive Davis next? The web of those connections goes on and on and on. Many people are going away, if you will, due to all of this being imminently exposed. Those who have taken part in these nefarious initiations that most likely have been recorded and may be exposed do know the secret of immortality, and that's why they really don't have a problem with dying or taking their life. They'd rather that than the humiliation and shame of their actions. Think about how many celebs have taken their lives, especially in bathtubs, and many mysteriously. Matthew Perry, for example. His book tells his story. It ends super eerily as becoming Batman, and he was found dead in water after consuming psychedelics. It seems like there's a bigger connection here. Remember, Free Britney, the Free Britney movement, started as, a grassroots fan movement where Britney didn't really say anything, but she said so much without saying anything. And that's exactly what she's doing now. She's saying so much about so many things without hardly saying anything at all. And it's the fans, once again, who are reading between the lines and putting the pieces together to know that there's something much more going on here. I'm pretty sure that Britney and crew is blowing the lid off of everything that we are told is a conspiracy. That's not. This leak of information and truth has been slowly dripping to us for years by Hollywood. For instance, the Barbie movement, men versus women, and of course, Glass Onion, Knives Out, Epstein Island, a twin being killed and her sister looking for the killer, secretly posing as her, harmful chemicals about to be released to the public, COVID with masks, the Mona Lisa, as you know, which is Britney's alias and title track, being the focal point of the movie. The parallels in this movie are endless. It's a great watch just for the codes themselves. Oh, and if you didn't know, the original Mona Lisa was replaced, just like the original Eucharist was replaced, and just like Britney. But that's all coming in my next video, because the Italian Leonardo da Vinci, who painted the Mona Lisa and the Last Supper, was involved with the very powerful Italian bloodlines. So you know what that means. He knew some stuff. The web of secrets grows bigger. I'll see you soon.